Hi, everyone. We've reached the end game. As we speak, the genocidal Chinese government is broadcasting their sports wash closing ceremony. Thank you for tuning in as we celebrate the dictators, tyrants, cowards, and scumbags that have kept us busy with their egregious atrocities. These Olympic Games are a human rights failure, and everyone involved in airing these games, including Olympic sponsors, spectators, and supporters, should be ashamed. History will look back on this time and react in horror at humanity's disregard to the documented suffering of millions. We'll never forget that in 2022, the Winter Olympics were conducted in a country that was actively and brazenly committing genocide. Whew.
Wait, Mix, I love your passion, but you need to calm down. Shouldn't you introduce yourself first?
Oh, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I just assumed all our fans already knew us, but for anyone that doesn't, hi, I'm Migs from Students for a Free Tibet.
Yeah, and me. I'm Jeffrey, the Policy and Research Fellow with the Hong Kong Democracy Council. Welcome back, everyone. For those of you who had the opportunity to watch our alternative opening ceremony from a few weeks ago, you may remember us from hosting that one. And obviously, we had a few of our friends join us last time. Some of them will be back in the next hour or so for our alternative closing ceremony, and there will be a couple of new faces as well. As many of you may have heard from NBC, the real opening ceremony ended up being the least watched opening ceremony in the US, at least. And so we are excited to be hosting this closing ceremony. Hopefully, it will also be the least watched one on record. And unlike last time, we will actually have more sort of lighthearted content and more references to Taylor Swift.
And honestly, there have been so many institutions and individuals that have made major contributions to these particular Olympic Games. And this award ceremony that we're hosting is an opportunity for us to highlight the folks that have committed these especially horrible acts. And just curious, Jeffrey, which category are you most excited for?
Yeah, so we will, as you said, be hosting this award ceremony, and I'm actually most excited for our first category, which is gold medal for shooting themselves in the foot. I'd like to now bring in Francis Hui from We the Hong Kongers to introduce the nominees for this award.
Next, we have the award for shooting themselves in the foot. This is an award dedicated to the major Olympic sponsors, all of which have been reached out by our activists throughout the campaign and have decided to ignore us. Knowing that China is committing a genocide on Uyghurs, sweeping Tibetan identity, and stripping off the freedom from Hong Kongers, and knowing that the IOC is complicit with China in covering these human rights atrocities, these companies still decided to partner with the IOC and have the audacity to say that they're bringing positive impacts to the international community. As horrific as this sounds, these are the companies that all of us might have encountered or supported at some point in our lives. That means this is probably a sign for you to not only boycott the Beijing Olympics, but also to withdraw any consumption of their products and services. So, the nominee of the gold medal for shooting themselves in the foot are Airbnb, Snickers, Alliance, and Coca-Cola. So now let's pass it to Taylor Sok-sang to present the award.
Hi, everyone. Now, honestly, this was a tough one. From Allianz in Munich to the Mars office in New Jersey, worldwide, we've been giving these sponsors hell. And honestly, after a lot of thinking, we think they are equally despicable. But the people have spoken, and Airbnb takes the cake for shooting themselves in the foot. Airbnb claims to be dedicated to a world in which anyone can belong anywhere. I quote. And I think they've truly taken this to heart, as they clearly have no problem with Tibetan children in colonial boarding schools, Hong Konger students in prison, and Uyghurs in concentration camp. But Airbnb prides themselves on quite a lot of other things, providing accessible travel accommodations, promoting diversity, and being an inclusive platform. Well, I'll give them that as well. They are certainly inclusive, so inclusive that they are willing to open up business to a country committing genocide actively. So undoubtedly, I think Airbnb deserves the gold for shooting themselves in the foot.
Woo! Congratulations, Airbnb. I mean, honestly, I thought Snickers had this one in the bag. They market their chocolate to children while actively ignoring the plight of millions of Uyghurs and Tibetan children in colonial boarding schools. I mean, I guess, I'm a little scared to say this. If Tibetans and Uyghur children ate more chocolate, maybe Snickers would care more.
Well, some of you watching right now are probably yelling at us. But what about the other Olympic sponsors? There are quite a few of them, right? Well, all Olympic sponsors should be ashamed, 100%. But we actually believe two in particular deserve a separate title, which is going to be our second sort of award for the morning or the afternoon for those of you watching elsewhere, which is the Ride or Dies. These sponsors have sponsored the games forever and always. I wish they didn't mean it, but they did. I'm talking about sponsoring the Olympics even when Hitler was hosting them in 1936, and also Russia right before they invaded Crimea, etc. And by the time some of you are watching this later on, it may also have started invading Ukraine. And of course, for those of you who might be familiar with Olympic history, the two companies are Allianz and Omega.
Damn, so thank you, Tella, for joining us for this portion of the introduction. Catch you in a few. Okay, so wow, now things are really heating up. Now we have John Jones from Free Tibet, as well as Tenzin Yangzom from Students for a Free Tibet to present the Skating on Thin Ice Award.
Oh, hi guys. Is Tenzin here to join me? Only me, I think. Okay. So yeah, the Skating on Thin Ice category is all about the broadcasters who showed these games and are probably smarting at the end of these Olympics. They've been a huge failure. There's been really low viewing figures. Thanks to our I Will Not Watch campaign, we know that the viewing figures are reportedly down about 30% from the last Olympics. And we also did some polling in the UK that found that 58% of UK Olympics fans were less likely to watch these Olympics precisely because of the host. So thanks to the I Will Not Watch campaign and thanks to campaigns around the world targeting NBC, the BBC, I think broadcasters have got our message that they shouldn't be complicit in broadcasting what people are calling these genocide games. So without further ado, I'm going to read the 4 nominees for this category, which I believe is Skating on Thin Ice. And the nominees are NBC, BBC, 7 Australia, and CBC. Yang Song.
Hey guys, sorry about the technical difficulties.
Shall we announce the winner?
Yes, so after very careful consideration and thoughts, we also decided that all 3 of these companies were equally horrific, and so they all are going to be getting this award. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well done,
well,
guys.
why don't we talk a bit more about the two of you who campaigned obviously against the broadcasters. John, you've done organizing against BBC in London, and Yangzom, obviously, for those of us who participated, we know that she has organized protests against NBC across the East Coast here in the US, in New York, in Boston, in Washington, and also the NBC Sports headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. So why don't the two of you share a bit more about how that went? John, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, we did some protests at the BBC, who were broadcasting it here on our days of action, and attracted a bit of attention. But what we mainly did in the UK was really push this I will not watch idea, which is just to convince, obviously, viewers to switch off these games and do something better with your time, like literally anything else. But in particular, looking at all of these sort of films from Hong Kong, Tibet and on the Uyghurs, which are far more educational and give the real story rather than the CCP's big public relations exercise. And like I said in the introduction, we got factual data that these campaigns worked, that when members of the public became aware of who the hosts were of these games and what they were up to, a lot of them just said, we're not going to watch this time. There's more important things to do than watch CCP's public relations events. So this was a huge success. I think I'll pass it over to Yangsong because I know they did tons at NBC.
Yeah, hey guys. So NBC was very active. I think we did a lot of campaigning and protests and actions at NBC in the United States. And I think the most important thing, or the biggest reason why we sort of went after them as hard as we did was because they claimed to have these morals. I think the exact line was like, they understand the power of media and technology to make meaningful connections, which we thought was extremely bizarre, as they refused to meet with us when we're literally outside their front doors in Connecticut as they are streaming and broadcasting the Olympics with a concentration camp survivor. So, every morals that they have on their website is just completely thrown out of, context and thrown off of anything. And so the NBC campaign first started with drop-offs to local headquarters all over the United States, including New York, Boston, San Francisco, LA, all these cities all around the United States. And so they are active, like they are aware of this campaign, and they just refuse to care. They refuse to meet with us. And so we've had to, continue our actions and protests. And we've staged multiple large protests at New York City at Rockefeller Center, which is where their headquarters are located. And so I think it was a meaningful campaign because it was led by young students from impacted communities, and then folks like concentration camp survivors and human rights defenders, where their lives were directly impacted by what NBC is aiding and abetting in. And so this was definitely a very special campaign to be a part of. And now NBC will forever go down in history as being complicit in these genocide games. So I think we were able to do what we set out to do with this campaign.
Right, and of course, Mix, you and I have also shown up to quite a few of these protests against NBC. We've tried, things like delivering letters, for instance, or in your case, you went to Stamford, Connecticut, and a few Hong Kongers as well. And while I was not able to go there, obviously there were folks, with signs and trying to, give letters to a lot of these employees. Some of them were able to respond, but many also didn't. What was your feeling about, also participating in this campaign against NBC, Mix?
I guess the word would be frustrating, because it did feel like we were making a lot of very valid points, and something that I learned recently about BBC just through working or speaking with John is that BBC is a publicly funded broadcaster. So it's their tax dollars are literally going to broadcasting a genocide games. And so in NBC, it's really frustrating because we know that they have so much money and they have so many resources to be able to, if not stop the Olympic Games, at least broadcast news and information about what's going on in Tibet or any of the other groups that have been affected by China's atrocities. But something I wanted to ask Yangsum real quick before we let her go is something Jeffrey mentioned, how y'all were able to actually speak with some NBC employees. Can you speak on particularly some of the things they said?
Yeah, sure. So the night of the opening ceremony, when you folks were, doing your alternative session, we had a group of Uyghurs, Hongkongers, and Tibetans go outside to NBC Sports where they were broadcasting the games live. And it was raining, we saw cars going back and forth. It was very cold, and it was all worth it at the end because we were able to meet with a handful of folks who were literally on their way to broadcast these games. So the exchanges felt very powerful. Yeah, also I echo Migs, it was frustrating because of their responses. I think one of them looked me dead in the eye as I handed him a flyer and said, oh, trust me, like we all know what's going on, like as in like everyone at NBC knows what's happening. And he said, but we can't do anything about it because NBC won't allow us. And so that was sort of appalling because, NBC had put out a statement saying, folks can, say what they want to and their morals and all this stuff. So, and I think another employee made an excuse like, oh, I would take this letter in for you, but I have to feed my family. And it's like, I'm standing next to like a literal concentration camp survivor. So for him to look me in the eye and tell me that he's worried about his job security when, there's a genocide happening and there's so much oppression, it just felt like extremely shocking and, again, disappointing. But I think we made a lot of headway, and a lot of folks in NBC, everyone at NBC clearly knows what they're doing. So.
Yeah, and I guess same questions with John too. I mean, were you able to speak with employees or a representative, or overall? I mean, how do you feel the experience went in terms of BBC? Because I know, with NBC, obviously is a private company, but BBC takes taxpayer money.
That's right, yeah. So it is accountable to the public in many ways. It was a really funny experience being in front of the BBC. The first time we went, which I think was 10th of December, Human Rights Day, where we were stood outside the front of the BBC with this huge banner that we've been using for the campaign. It's like 24 meters long. You're not going to miss it. And just seeing all of the sort of terrified security behind us, sort of wondering who these people were that just descended on their office. But one of the strange things is that the previous time we'd been there was actually to say thank you. The BBC broadcast a segment on the Panchen Lama, on his disappearance. They did that, I think, around 2019. And we went there, to hold a gathering just to say, like, thank you, BBC, thank you for speaking up for Tibet. So it's very strange to come back and this time have a more adversarial relationship where it's, this time you're doing the CCP's PR work for them. No engagement with employees. The police did come and pay us a visit, but we weren't doing anything wrong. So we just, stood our ground. And we even came back on the 4th when we had that day of action. Again, I think the main effect with the BBC was a lot of passers-by and a lot of BBC employees would have heard our message. So even if nothing changed, it could still be counted as a big success.
Right, for sure. Well, thank you to both of you for sharing your experiences in the UK and also here in the US. And that's it for our third award, which was skating on thin ice. Mix, the thing about skating on thin ice is that sooner or later it will crack.
I mean, facts. And honestly, broadcasting an Olympic Games with genocide as the backdrop is despicable and dangerous. And these large institutions like NBC and BBC are completely to blame. But the buck does stop somewhere. And there are particular people in positions of immense power whose actions obviously and directly resulted in China being awarded the 2022 Olympic Games. And in typical award show fashion, the nominees are all old white men. Woo! And here to help us present the nominees and the award is Zoe Bedford from Australia Tibet Council. So, hi, Zoe.
Hi. G'day.
I'm really excited to know who gets the gold medal for pucking around with human rights.
Pucking around with human rights. Yeah, well, there's, quite a few of them, as you said, all old white guys. So I'll get to it. We've got 4 nominees, all equally as trash baggy as each other. So the first nominee is the IOC's Mark Adams, who, when we're asked about Uyghur concentration camps, said it's not relevant to the IOC, obviously. At press conferences, sensitive questions about human rights, about the Uyghur labor camps, about Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Tibet were battered away by Mr. Mark Adams, who said that he wouldn't answer it because he wanted to be neutral. The IOC is politically neutral. I mean, lol. It's like as if activists, like as if we're the ones who are politicizing this. Like the IOC made this political when they chose China to host the games, And I mean, it can't be a surprise to them. I don't know if this guy, Mark Adams, can't remember as far back as 2008 when, of course, those Olympics were riddled with controversy and human rights activists were everywhere, all over them. So maybe they have exceptionally short memories at the IOC. Maybe they can't remember. Maybe they think we went away, but Tibetans, Uyghurs, human rights activists, both inside China and outside China, we haven't gone anywhere. And sporting bodies around the world need to remember that. So on to our next nominee, who has a name that might make you blush. From Canada, it's Dick Pound. Dick Pound is from Canada's IOC, and he mistakenly believed that China would ensure freedom of speech. I mean, what an idiot. Has he even been to China before? Like, Dick Pound, maybe it's more like Dickhead. So Mr. Pound said that China's Olympic Organizing Committee would allow athletes to speak their minds at press conferences on issues like the Uyghur Muslim labor camps. The Organizing Committee has given us a guarantee that there'll be freedom of speech for athletes. I mean, how would he even think that? Because according to the IOC's own rules, competitors can't make protests during sporting events or medical ceremonies. I mean, in a way, they're as bad as China. Maybe that's why they're such good friends. I don't know. So third nominee is UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who attended the Beijing Winter Olympics opening ceremony, despite the diplomatic boycott that was being undertaken by several countries. And while he was there, he said, without any sense of like irony or self-awareness at all, in a moment where we see so many expressions of populism, so many expressions of racism, so many expressions of xenophobia, and anti-Muslim hatred, to be here and to be with athletes that come from all cultures, all countries, and all ethnicities is a fantastic message. And then he called the Olympic Games an instrument for world peace. I mean, what a scumbag. Does he even know that Muslims are being persecuted, that Uyghur Muslims are in concentration camps? I mean, how could he say things like that? And, of course, we do know that he does know about it because he's the UN Secretary General, but also because he hoped that his attendance at the Games would lead to a visit to Xinjiang by himself, the High Commissioner, to do like a fact-finding mission. So, why would he need to do that if this is such a great place for peace and, expressions like that? Moving on.
I just need to that was so good.
Well, we're not finished, I'm afraid. So the fourth nominee is French President Emmanuel Macron, who, confirmed that France wouldn't be joining the diplomatic boycott because he thought it was symbolic and insignificant. And he said, I don't think we should politicize these topics, especially if it's to take steps that are insignificant. And he only wanted to do things that would have a useful effect. And then he proceeded to pledge full support for Beijing Winter Olympics. And, I'm really left wondering how much useful effect that kind of action has on human rights in China. We know that in 2008, the French President Nicolas Sarkozy was considering a French boycott of the Beijing opening ceremony. But not Macron. No. Even when other world leaders were committing diplomatic boycotts and stating their reasons about human rights and about the human rights abuses being committed against Tibetans and Uyghurs and people of Hong Kong, he thought that he should still go and that he would stand against this multilateral action on China. So I think before I announce the big winner, we might just remember the ones who listened to the activists who actually paid attention to what was going on in China and who did agree to a big diplomatic boycott. And countries like the USA, UK, Australia, Canada, Japan, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Scotland, the list goes on, Lithuania, Latvia, Belgium, Austria, all these countries could understand the message that their diplomatic boycott would send to China and that it was not insignificant. And it was actually a strong message and a unified message, And just to remember again that these countries actually also wouldn't have done anything if it wasn't for the activists pushing them at every step of the way, people around the world who stood up. People around the world who actually care about human rights. But the winner for saying "fuck you" to all the other world leaders and who refused to stand up for human rights and who refused to do a diplomatic boycott was French President Macron. He wins the Genocide Games gold medal for pucking with human rights. I'll put this in the post to him. I think he'll like it. Yeah.
We'll send it in the mail. He'll get it later.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zoe.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Mix, looking at all these winners and nominees so far, I can't help to think that we really are quite literally fighting the man.
Yep. I mean, toss me the car keys. Let's puck the patriarchy.
All right. So obviously, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think this category is very well deserved, and I loved Zoe's delivery. And yeah, I think I really thought France was gonna do something different when I heard that they were criticizing other countries for a diplomatic boycott. I was like, oh my gosh, France is about to pull out and do something amazing and crazy and heroic and activist vibes, and then they didn't. So.
Yeah, I mean, once again, the French have gone alone in terms of their sort of foreign policy, and being one of the most sort of notable, big power and significant country to not boycott the games, while many of its allies have. I mean, that was really a disappointing experience, to see sort of their approach. Yeah, but let's sort of go ahead.
Oh, and I just also wanted to say that we shouldn't forget India, right? For not just diplomatically boycotting, but also stopping the broadcasting of the games in their country. I mean,
yes, and since you brought that up, I mean, there is a border conflict, ongoing one, between China and India, and of course, I can't help but recall in 1962. Their first sort of major border conflict, of the 20th century, was over control of Tibet. That was sort of 3 years after the Chinese takeover. So there's been a long sort of history of this kind of border clashes between China and India, and and some of that can be relevant to our causes too. Anyway, so sort of moving on from our past session, obviously up until now, if you were nominated in any of these categories, you were basically the scum of the earth, and these folks are why we can't have nice things.
I mean, but to counter that, we also have some amazing allies and who have helped amplify our voices. And we just wanted to take a moment to highlight those folks. I mean, simply put, it's nice to know we have friends. And now we have one of our great friends, Joey Sue from Hong Kong Watch, to present the Good Samaritans. Hi, Joey.
Hi, everyone. So after so much disappointment, I'm here to bring the good news. So throughout the whole No Beijing 2022 campaign, we have witnessed so many terrible people all across the globe, and in governments and broadcasting companies and different international organizations who have been ignoring and neglecting the human rights abuses committed by the Chinese Party. But then we still have a lot of amazing people who contributed to the campaign, who took a very courageous stance to voice out for human rights. So today we're presenting the Good Samaritan Award to 6 of the amazing activists and also athletes who very bravely voiced out for human rights abuses committed by Beijing. So the first one is a very, very famous athlete. So he is Drew Nelson. Drew is an award-winning Canadian snowboarder who competed at both the 2006 and also 2010 Winter Olympics. He's one of the few athletes who first broke the silence and encouraged his athletes of Canada to join the government in boycotting the 2022 Beijing Genocide Games. So we applaud Drew for courageously taking a stance against the Chinese Communist Party's human rights abuses. And then the second one, the award also goes to Timothy LeDuc. Timothy is an American pair skater. They are a two-time U.S. national champion. They are also the very first openly non-binary U.S. Winter Games athlete. And when they were asked if athletes should use their responsibility and also platform to draw attention to human rights abuses with their influence and also with their fame, they acknowledged the ongoing Uyghur genocide happening in East Turkestan right now, and they successfully brought a lot of attention on these human rights atrocities currently committed by Beijing against Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hongkongers, and all other communities. And the third awardee is Evan Bates. Evan is an American ice dancer and a two-time world medalist. When asked about China's human rights issues, Evan said, "Speaking on behalf of all athletes, I can say human rights violations are terrible, and we believe that it tears the fabric of humanity. We applaud him for his bravery to speak out." And the fourth one is a very familiar person, and his name is Enes Kanter Freedom. Enes is an NBA star who previously played for Boston Celtics, and he turned into a very passionate human rights advocate for the communities under oppression. He used his platform and also his playtime on the NBA court to bring attention to the abuses that our people in Hong Kong, East Turkestan, and Tibet are currently suffering. So we are very thankful for his allyship and also his support to our people. And the fifth one, the award goes to Kathleen Granger. Kathleen is a former UK rower and also the current chairperson of UK Sport. We know that when athletes take a stance to speak out or for human rights issues, they often face a very serious backlash from their home countries. But then Kathleen, as the chairperson of UK Sport, rightfully expressed her full support for any athletes who are going to speak out for human rights issues or other values that they believe in. We applaud for her support to athletes and also for her allyship. And the last one goes to Congressman Jim McGovern. Congressman Jim McGovern is a Democratic member of the House of Representatives representing Massachusetts' 2nd Congressional District. He's the chairperson of the House Rules Committee and also the co-chairperson of the CC, the Congressional Executive Commission on China. He is a long-term ally of the people of Hong Kong, Tibet, East Turkestan, and Taiwan. And we are very thankful for his support and also allyship throughout our movement and also throughout the campaign. So congratulations to all these amazing people for being awarded the only good award presented here today at the alternative closing ceremony. Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you for that, and I should note that Joey, for those of you who are watching, are joining obviously Mix and I here on the East Coast time, which is still 7:30 in the morning, so it's quite early for all of us. And I can't help but also make the observation that 2 of the 5 winners, Jim McGovern and Enes Kanter Freedom, are representatives from Massachusetts, and Joey, I think you're in Boston right now, so that's very that's very fitting. And I also want to pause for a moment to note that 3 minutes ago I actually got this pop notification from the New York Times saying that the closing ceremony has begun for the Beijing Olympics. This is basically follow for updates. So obviously we are here hosting our alternative closing ceremony, and I want to thank all of you who are watching this instead of that.
Real quick, before I let Joey go, something really interesting that happened late last night was that both Joey and Jeffrey received suspicious emails from one of the coordinators of this alternative closing ceremony. And I was wondering if either of you would like to speak a little bit more about it, because that was definitely one of the most interesting moments of my existence on this earth.
Yeah, so last night I was a friend of mine from Boston is actually leaving Boston very soon. So we were having a farewell dinner with him, and we were at a bar. We were like chilling, talking, like saying goodbye to him. And then all of a sudden, I got an email from Mandy, and I clicked into the email, and then I saw that, "Hi Joey, after discussion with our comrades, including Jeffrey, etc., we decided that we're going to postpone our closing ceremony to 14 p.m. GMT. And then I figured, wow, this is really strange. We never made like such a last minute decisions, and this is not the email that Mandy usually uses to communicate with me. So I was very shocked and also like confused and everything. So I immediately texted Mandy and say, "Hey Mandy, is this really your email?" But then obviously Mandy was asleep, but that was like a midnight in UK. So I texted all the other coordinators and also presenters of this closing ceremony. And then obviously I saw that my comrade Jeffrey also got a suspicious email from the same email account. So yeah, I mean, I guess that shows that somebody from the Chinese Communist Party or the pro-Beijing groups are paying very close attention to our closing ceremony. So yes, thank you for watching.
Yeah, and Joey's comrade Jeffrey, yours truly, also got that email. Basically an identical email, except in that one, the person pretending to be Mandy now says that Dorji cannot join us on time, and obviously we know Dorji is the executive director of Students for Free Tibet, Mixture organization, and he wasn't going to be in the lineup anyway. So that was very strange. In addition to everything else, so we had a bit of fun on Twitter, and hopefully someone from the Chinese government is watching us right now, and thank you if you are for investing in our campaign. Anyway, so I think that's it for this portion. Joey, thanks for joining us again, and since by the way, since we did mention Mandy, for those of you who watched our opening ceremony last time, she was with us for a few minutes, and then she's actually on this live stream on the backstage. No one can see her, but we can, and of course we should also thank her for coordinating both of these ceremonies and for her work throughout the whole campaign. Now, Mix, I think this is the moment everybody has been waiting for. We did a People's Choice Award. We had a poll online and on social media, and it was a tight race between Xi Jinping and Thomas Bach for the Ultimate Failure Award. We now, I think, have Tella coming back here to announce the winner.
Yeah, so as Jeffrey said, this is the moment we have all been waiting for. It's the Ultimate Failure Award. But first, does anyone have any guesses as to who won this category?
Well, if I were to guess, I think that would be Thomas Bach. I mean, to have to preside over an organization that has lost just so much credibility, this time around, and the sort of most complicit episode that I can recall is that when the tennis star Pang Shuai disappeared after making allegations of sexual harassment late last year against a former Chinese Communist Party official, that instead of trying to find out what was going on, he actually came out and did a sort of video conferencing, obviously staged one with Pang Shuai herself, and then claiming to everyone that the tennis star was fine, and I don't think anybody in the world would really believe that. Wait, Mix, you're mute, but
there were only two people in this category, so Thomas Bach and Xi Jinping. And I mean, I don't even think I have to say much. I personally think Xi Jinping should win this award for obvious reasons. And actually, someone that I want to bring in that will probably speak more to it is Mandy McEwen. Do we have Mandy here? Oh, sorry, folks. A little technical on my end. Mandy will not be joining us. I mean, Bima from Students for a Free Tibet. Sorry about that.
Hey guys, hey Jeffrey, Migs, and Tella. Migs, what was your question again?
Oh, my question was just so Jeffrey is rooting for Thomas Bach to win Ultimate Failure Award, but I think it should be Xi Jinping, and I think you can definitely speak a little bit more on why.
Well, I mean, clearly, Thomas Bach and Xi Jinping are both absolute failures. I think that's the thing that everyone can agree on. In terms of Xi Jinping, if I can just think about all of the complete fails since Xi Jinping has come to power, there are so many that come to mind. Absolutely, in terms of the Uyghur genocide, in terms of the escalation of repression inside Tibet, there are definitely some highlights that Xi Jinping has introduced to the movement, and in terms of human rights repression, that would really make him a good fit for this award.
All right. Well, we did put up a poll, and the results were in by a landslide vote. Thomas Bach won for Ultimate Failure Award. Yeah, so I guess at this point, I think we already put our explanations in for why we think each person should win, but I think it's well deserved. This whole entire 2022 Olympics has been a failure, and he was the one in charge of the International Olympic Committee and all of the activities under it. So I do think this is a well-deserved award, and I guess I will pass it next to Bach's favorite human rights activist, Bemaroma, to talk about the Oppressor of the Century Award.
Wait, Pema,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Tella, for the transition to the Oppressor of the Century Award. Of course, there was, I think, a lot of debate back and forth, but Thomas Bach definitely went home with that award of the biggest failure of the Olympics. When it comes to the Oppressor of the Century, I think there's only one clear person who should really be the highlight for this award. So just some of the things that come to mind when it goes to awarding the Oppressor of the Century award. Many people might have been wondering, oh no, why didn't Xi Jinping get the Failure of the Olympics award? But there's no need to worry. Xi Jinping will be going home with possibly the biggest award of the night, and that is the Oppressor of the Century. When you think about Xi Jinping and everything that Xi Jinping has done inside Tibet, in East Turkestan, in Hong Kong, there's no reason for anyone to doubt or any reason for any surprise when it comes to this award. When you think about Tibet, for example, Tibet has been ranked as the least free place or country or territory in the entire world. This was an escalation that took place under the amazing leadership of Xi Jinping, as well as when you think about the escalated repression of those Uyghurs that are living in East Turkestan. That is the largest mass internment of human beings, period, since the Holocaust. And that's also happened under the amazing leadership of Xi Jinping, as well as the detention and arrest of over 10,000 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. So I think for all of those reasons, all of us here can agree that Xi Jinping is well deserved for the Oppressor of the Century award.
Yeah, well, thanks, Pema, for for coming on and explaining the sort of record of Xi Jinping, and I can't help but sort of echo for those of you who were watching the opening ceremony, you might remember what I said at the outset a few weeks ago. I think this time around, obviously, there's a lot of cross solidarity movements coming together to protest the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing in a way that was just not possible back in 2008. And obviously, we as activists have grown a lot, and our civil societies as well. But really, I mean, it's difficult to imagine that this would have been possible, or I should say necessary, if not for the crackdown that we've seen, not just in Tibet, as had been the case for so many decades, but also, in Hong Kong, Taiwan, facing military threats, as we always say. It's important to defend its freedom there, but it's not guaranteed. And in the past couple of years, reports of concentration camps, where Uyghurs are put in over in East Turkestan, and it's basically all Xi Jinping's making. So he really deserved that last award there. And I think we are sort of approaching our end. I just want to sort of review all the awards that we've given tonight. The 7 in total. First we had shooting themselves in the foot. The second one was Ride or Die, and these were for Olympic sponsors. The third award that we gave was Skating on Thin Ice for broadcasters. The fourth one was Pucking Around with Human Rights for a lot of these individuals and diplomats and government representatives. We had a fifth award with the Good Samaritan for our allies and friends. And then we ended with Ultimate Failure Award for Thomas Bach, and of course, the seventh one being the Oppressor of the Century for Xi Jinping. Mix, do you have anything to add?
I mean, honestly, while we have these two, Tela and Bima are definitely two of the foremost activists in this particular No Beijing campaign. And not to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to ask what is maybe one of the most memorable moments for you throughout this No Beijing campaign?
All right, I guess I can go. Honestly, there are so many. But I do think for me, one of the most memorable amongst many others, as I said, was actually being outside of the White House doing a 57-hour vigil alongside Hongkongers, Uyghur human rights defenders, one of whom was actually in a concentration camp. So I think if anything, all right, actually, let me set the stage a little. For those who don't know, we were outside essentially calling on Biden to bring up human rights in his agenda, in his summit with Xi Jinping. And we were outside for 57 hours in the cold. And I think, if anything, it was just a testament to the cross-movement solidarity that we've built throughout this campaign. We had everyone there. We simply had everyone there. We had so many supporters from DC coming in, and it just felt like we were so supported by one another, despite the cold weather, despite people who were coming up to us and asking, is this really going to do anything? Can he even hear you? And we were told that, in fact, when you're in the White House, you can hear those protesters. Somebody who had been in the White House told us, I've been in there and you can always hear the protesters. So we knew that Biden was hearing us. And just a few days later, the US actually called for a diplomatic boycott of the games. So I did think it was both, I thought it was both successful, and it was just a sign of the solidarity. And as one of our friends said, it showed that solidarity is tangible, and I really think that's true. So I would say that was my favorite moment.
Yeah, one of my favorite chants from that particular action, I guess, is Biden, why you hiding? And I can't wait. I was actually really curious to see the faces of people who passed by and told us, like, what you guys are doing is not going to do anything. It's not going to change anything. I would have loved to see their faces when Biden announced the diplomatic boycott.
Yeah, and obviously, Mix, you were there, I was there as well. That was outside the White House. For those of you who don't know, that was mid November, so it's actually been more than 3 months since that rally, and I remember that as well. I mean, it ended, I believe, either on a late Sunday or early Monday, ahead of the virtual meeting between President Biden and Xi Jinping. And then it was literally within 24 or 48 hours after we ended that rally, that I believe it was Josh Rogan from the Washington Post who broke that story, saying that the Biden administration had been considering a diplomatic boycott, and obviously the president did follow through on that. And with, I believe, the exception of Lithuania, every other country that ended up diplomatically boycotting the Olympics this time around did so after the US. And so I think that really was a very important moment for us. Pema, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think there were so many memorable moments throughout the campaign. One that really stands out to me was really recently. It was the last protests that we had outside of NBC, and I think there were, there were so many things that stood out to me throughout the campaign. But in particular, there was a moment where there were so many young, really, really young activists from the Tibetan community, and we were there outside of NBC, trying to raise awareness amongst the employees of NBC, and it was kind of in that moment when it dawned on me that this campaign, it's not over, when the closing ceremony ends. It's really, it's a lifetime campaign, and the really young Tibetans that came out that day just were so memorable to me, because it was that reminder that we all need, that beyond the Olympics, beyond this individual campaign, our movement will persist, our movement will continue, because we have no choice, because that's the future, and that's what the future really is needed of us. That's what's needed of us as campaigners. That's what's needed of us as a movement. And, we can't let those young people down. We need to continue. We need to continue being, doing everything that we can to ensure that the future generations, that the future generations have us to look up to, and have us to continue, aspiring to build a movement with. And yeah, so I think that was a really big highlight for me.
I mean, the animals have spoken. We're all united against the CCP.
Yeah. Well, let me end by saying this. And I would say for the past hour or so, I've been sort of struggling to decide between whether I should giggle at a lot of these remarks that our guests and ourselves have made, but also continuing to think about the victims of all these human rights atrocities that have been highlighted. But I just want to say a note of thank you for everyone who's joined us, our guests, this morning, and also everybody else who are not here with us this morning but have been participating in this campaign for the past year or so. Mix?
Yeah, and also a special mention to Rashi, who is also right behind the screen with us at every moment, taking up all these meetings with us and making these alternative ceremonies possible. And thank you all for watching, and thank you to every single person who made an effort to turn off or not watch these Olympics, and who every day does something, even if it's just like a small thing, to contribute to the anti-CCP movement. So yeah, this was really a cross-movement collective effort. And I just want to take a moment to also thank every single activist, including Tilla in the little box over there, who has been working so tirelessly. And I also just want to acknowledge how privileged we are to be able to, stand in these positions to host things like this and not fear for our immediate and direct safety. And I just want to send a heartfelt, I guess, honestly, if I could, a hug to every single person who is currently suffering under the Chinese regime. And to the viewers at home, please, please, please continue to denounce the Chinese government's human rights atrocities with us. And yeah, stay with us in this long-term battle. All right, so if there is nothing else, I guess. Yes, and real quick, last thing, make sure to also donate and support to these organizations that are working so tirelessly to amplify the voices of those suffering under the Chinese regime. Anything else, Jeffrey, before we close off, head out?
No, I think that's it. I'm heading back to bed. It's not even 8 o'clock here on the East Coast, so we gotta go. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in. See everybody later.
NBC, do the right thing! 미장아이 텐가나 진영 고치도